So, my toxic, masculine father, he's making fun of me in a group full of his friends because I'm more successful than him. And just because I'm a woman, he thinks that he can treat me badly and do all sorts of things to him. Well, guess what? I'm not the little girl I used to be, and I decide to stand up to him, and I do this. Fathers have always been the ones who look after and care for their daughters, but in my case it was different. When most of my childhood friends used to tell me how their fathers were their heroes, well, I simply could not relate. Not because my father was dead or anything, but simply because he treated me like trash. He hit me over the smallest little things, and I don't know, just always made me believe that having a girl child was a waste or a curse. I was born into a family of 4. That's my parents and my 2 younger brothers. One would expect that since I was born, example, the oldest child of the family, I would be pampered by my parents, respected my younger brothers, but it was far from that. Although my mother and my maternal grandmother had always treated me with love, I struggled to get love from my father. I'd say that my dad was the kind of masculine, egoistic man who always treated females like trash. For example, he had very little respect for his mother, did not respect his older sisters, and always treated my mom like, well, he did her a favor by even marrying her. The only mistake Mom made was to think that my father's perception of women would change once he had his own daughter, and she even told me that she used to pray for their first child just to be a girl, and God answered her prayers. Unfortunately, things did not turn out the way she expected. Instead of my father changing his perception of women, it became worse after she had me. My mom said there was even a time when my father did not want me to go to school. He insisted that I stay back at home and help out with the house chores and in the kitchen, but my mother kicked against it to the extent that he hit her for days on end until he changed his mind. I'll be honest, when I grew up and noticed that my presence always irritated my dad and would trigger him to treat me in a very bad way, I thought that there was something wrong with me. My dad was so heartless that he never held me as a baby. In fact, he was disappointed that my mom gave birth to a girl instead of a boy. Growing up, I remember him as a very, very angry person. He was always yelling at me or my mom, even at the dining table. Living with my father was like walking on eggshells on a daily basis, and there was absolutely nothing that I could do to please him. To date, I don't know how my mom managed to live all those years with someone like him, because there was not a week that passed that my father did not hit my mom. If she served him cold tea instead of piping hot tea, he would hit her. If this food was too spicy or not even spicy enough as he loved his meals to be, he would hit her. He hit her to the extent that she no longer cried and would apologize even when she wasn't wrong. Well, when I turned 4 years of age, a couple months later, my mom gave birth to my immediate brother. The day my brother was born was the day I realized that as far as I was a girl, my father could never love me and accept me as a child. For someone who was angry all the time, my father became a totally different person once my brother was born. I would not be exaggerating if I said that my father literally worshipped my brother and just always bragged to his friends and neighbors about how God finally blessed him with a child. Hearing my father constantly talk about how he was childless and how finally having a boy just made him proud, father always broke my heart. He pampered and took care of my immediate brother like he was the only child in the world. If he went out or traveled, he would only buy toys and new stuff for my brother and would leave me wondering if I was cursed. When I watch YouTube videos of women who talk about how their father maltreated them or the men in their lives maltreated them in one way or another, I always relate to their stories. Every time I come across something like that online, it always brings back the pain I felt as a child and as a teenager. My case was so bad that if my immediate younger brother and I were playing together and he cried for any reason, my father would rush to the scene and just hit me without even asking why my brother was crying. There was a time he pulled my hair so hard and did not even mind that I was in screaming pain. Well, as my brother ended up to grow older, he transferred his twisted perception of women to him and started disrespecting me as well. He would yell at me, call me all sorts of just degrading names, and even order me in the presence of my father to make food for him or clean up his table after eating. To even make it worse, my father would order my brother to tell me to do chores an older sister should not be doing for a younger brother. When all this was happening, my mother or my grandmother could not even do anything to save me. They just told me to tolerate everything my father did or said to me because it was a way of showing my respect for him. At that young age, I knew everything that my father did or said to my mother was wrong. I knew that if you love someone, you would not want to hurt them or say mean things to them, and that's how I made a promise to myself that I would not let anyone treat me that way or talk to me in the way that my father did. At age 9, my mom got pregnant again and gave birth to another boy. Trust me, I was happy and excited to be an older sister again, but my happiness did not last long. As my second brother grew older, my father poisoned his mind towards women, just as he did with my first brother. And by the time my brother was born, my father's toxicity had grown to a worse level. Worse is, he became an alcoholic and would hit me almost every single day. There's something that he did that always made me so mad. He would invite all of his toxic, egoistic friends to our house, and they would all talk about how they discipline their wives at home and all the crap close-minded men say. Well, that's not all. If he called my mom to come and service him and his friends, he would abuse her for the minute she walked into the room to the minute she left. He and his friends would laugh and humiliate her, and then they would brag about how women are nothing without men, and how the only place a woman's meant to be is beneath a man or in the kitchen. Even as I share this story, the memories of everything that happened are still so fresh in my head, and each time I remember, I feel so terrible for my mom. Over the years, everything father said to her and did to her messed her self-esteem up, so much so that she could not even fight him back or simply stand up for herself. She just began to accept my father's heart-wrenching words as her reality and just simply a part of her identity. To even think that there were times my mother tried to convince me to be, quote, an obedient and good daughter and not get into fights with my dad. LOL. Thank goodness I never listened to her, or else I would be somewhere right now, thinking that women have no power in the world because some old, close-minded man beat the heck out of me and brainwashed me into thinking that nothing good could come out of me. And the only place I could ever be is the kitchen. Anyways, to cut a long story short, I moved out of my father's house when I turned 16. After I completed high school, my father refused for me to further my education despite knowing how passionate I was about school. He preferred to waste his money on drinks, gambling, and obviously spent them on younger women, and squandered it on my brother's unnecessary needs. After I finished high school, my father looked me in the face and blatantly told me that he would never waste his money on a woman's education because I was worthless. And since a man would marry me off, there's no need to spend all that money on me. My mother tried to beg him to reconsider and even convince him that the world was changing. But each time she tried to talk to him, he would end up hitting her. As usual, it got to a point where I could not take it anymore. So I told my mom to stop begging my dad, and when we came up with a plan, my grandmother managed to convince one of my aunts to take me in, and she did. It was at my aunt's place that I actually had the opportunity to work for 2 years just to save up for college. My aunt and her husband were also so supportive, and I'd say in the 3 years I was done with the management course that I did. Luckily for me, I got a good-paying job with my aunt's husband's recommendation. He had a friend who worked in the management industry I work at now, and that's how we got word that his company was hiring, and that was that. I've been working in that organization for the past 5 years, and I've grown in ways I've never expected. If you're wondering if my dad and I now have a good relationship, I'd say the answer is no. In fact, over the past 8 years, our relationship's been worse than when I was younger. He hasn't changed in any way, except he's gotten even more angry. He was angry that I'd become very successful as a woman, and I proved to him that women do not need men like him to succeed, and I did not need to be confined to the walls of a kitchen. The first time I visited home after moving out at age 16, my father was so mad that he didn't even let me into his house. He said that I disrespected him by leaving the house without any of his permission, and that I no longer had a place in his home. I was angry, so angry in fact that I left. I did not even visit him for the next 3 years, and I didn't speak to him either. I kept communicating with Mom, and that's how things remained for years. It wasn't until 2 years ago that my mom convinced me to come home again just to apologize to my father. Trust me, guys, I never wanted to do that, but because Mom insisted that I try to make things up with him, I decided to give it a shot after more than a year of procrastinating. One weekend, I went back to our hometown, and I don't know, I just went to try to settle things with Father. It's not the kind of settling that you might have in mind. It was just me massaging his stupid ego and apologizing for leaving him without, giving it his permission first. He didn't say very much to me, but I'd say his facial expression showed that he had been waiting years to hear me say that, and I could literally see his ego rise like yeast as I went to apologize to him. Our relationship simply did not improve after that. It only gave me the chance to get closer to my mom. To be honest, I've always yearned to sit together with my family and eat with him. Even when my father was known to be treating me so badly, I still yearned for it. I was ready to just forget all the emotional, verbal scars that I went through and see if maybe we could salvage our relationship. But you know what? That never happened. For some reason, my doing well financially and having jobs and just being independent made my father very, very angry. It started with him making all these snide remarks about successful women, and I can remember vividly weeks after I ironed things out with my father just to please my mom. Anytime I would drop by to visit Mom, he would say something about how all the successful women out there were, well, very much a slur name, and how they used their bodies to achieve all the success that they had in life. The first time that he went ahead to say it, I ignored him as much as I could. I knew he was talking about me, but I ignored him and pretended I did not understand what he was even talking about. The next time it happened, my brothers joined him in making jest of me. They laughed and would mimic two people being romantic with each other just to spite me. But I completely ignored them, and it was funny because my dad and brothers could be talking about something important or even unimportant, but the moment they saw me coming, they would change the topic and begin to talk down on women who were doing well. Already, I knew my father was the kind of man who would rather die than have a woman succeed more than him. He was the kind of man who would rather resign from his job than have a woman as his boss. He was just mentally messed up. And he made sure he did everything he could to talk down on women and never appreciate anything they did for him or society. Even my mom knew that he was trying to do stuff, and she told me to keep ignoring him. Well, I tried my best to simply ignore him until I could not take it anymore. That day, we were having a family gathering, and some of my cousins were invited. We're not a very big family since some of my dad's sisters cut him off. It was more of a cousins from my paternal uncles, and my moms, my aunts, and I were the only women in the midst of 8 men. So I guess you can already imagine what the setting was looking like. Shortly after, my mom and aunts, they started to settle to eat after serving everybody. My nosy and annoying uncle began to ask questions about my job. Since he was one of the only people who supported my father when I wanted to further my education, I used the opportunity to rub everything in his face. I bragged about the school, I bragged about my grades, and how I was able to get a good-paying job. The moment I began to answer my uncle's questions, I could literally see my dad's face turning red. He was so uncomfortable with the fact that I earned triple what he earned, ever, and I was doing way better than everybody in the room, including my brothers, whom my father absolutely adored. My uncle was clearly not happy as well, but he did a great job at masking his feelings, and I even started to notice the sudden change of expression on my brother's face too, but you know what? I didn't really care. I'd been waiting for the perfect opportunity to share all that I wanted to share with them. About 5 minutes after I started my mild bragging, my father flared up and began to yell at me. He called me shameless, And he said that I wasn't ashamed to sell my body for my job. It was the first time he was directly speaking to me. I was so offended, plus all the feelings I'd bottled up, and I yelled back at him too. The shock on his face showed that he wasn't expecting that response, but you know what? I didn't care. When he saw that his insults did not shake me in a way, he began to say, "I know women like you are brainless, and the only way you could have gotten all that money was by sleeping with your boss. So quit the whole pretense. You can fool your mom, but you can't fool me." Well, I was offended. I left the dining table almost immediately after I gave him a piece of my mind. I know the reason he was so pained. It's because my brothers were jobless, and you know what? They still are. He could just accept the fact that most women can do better than men through their hard work. Since that day, I had no contact with my dad and brothers. I called my mom and only would secretly send her money. Now, the reason I'm sharing all this is because 2 months after we had that fight, my mom called to tell me that my father's been admitted to the hospital. He has liver failure. She wants me to pay for his operation, and I know my mom would never call me for something like that, especially after the last fight that we had. So I got the address of the hospital, and when I got there to see my father's condition, I found out that my brothers actually forced my mom to call me. When my dad saw me, he begged me and pleaded me, and he even said, "Please pay for the operation." But he didn't seem remorseful for all the things that he had said and done to me or said to me in the past. I told him to admit that he's been a terrible father, and he said he would rather die than say that. Well, I was obviously hurt by his words, so I ended up leaving him there and talking to my mom. And anyways, it wasn't easy to take my mom because my brothers tried to stop me and they even threatened me, but I won. For the 7 months that followed, I did not go back to see my dad, and we did not talk. He managed to sell the house to help sort out the hospital bills, but that did not sustain him for very long. Last week, I got a call from one of my family members, and I got the news that my father passed away, and I've been invited to the burial. Anyways, let me cut the story short. I didn't go, and I did not let my mom go either. She begged and begged for me to let her attend the burial, but I couldn't. Every time I look at that woman and the scars on her old skin, all I can remember is the horrible way my father treated her. The burial was 2 days ago, and I felt like I made the right decision then, but right now it feels like I did the wrong thing by not forgiving my dad and attending his burial. I'm so confused right now, and then there's this unexplainable guilt building inside me. Am I the a-hole for letting my father die by not paying for his operation? I don't even want to get started with how I feel about not attending his burial. I don't know if I've made the right or wrong decision. Please, I need some help. I look forward to your suggestions. Thank you so much. What's up, everybody? I have 3 updates for you. Mr. Reddito here. You guys might be surprised at how these updates turn out, but let me know in the comment section if you would have gone to the burial if you were in OP's position. My answer is heck to the no. Here is update number 1. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your comments and suggestions. They are so heartwarming. There I was, thinking that I had the most terrible father in the whole world, not knowing there were others like me. I guess we all feel the hurt from our father's ill treatment because every child's meant to have a special bond. So when the bond's missing, it creates room for many terrible thoughts in the mind of the child. No kidding, guys, I grew up believing that there was something wrong with me. My dad treated me in the most horrible ways you can think of. For years, I was not allowed to speak to him or join any conversation he was having with my brothers. Every day I wondered why Mom was always in so much pain. The poor woman, I've become a shadow of herself and had lost her self-worth and all of her self-esteem even. Wow. She lived in a constant fear of my father and was so conscious of every single damn thing that she did. You're all right. I should have no regret for the decision I made. My dad scarred me for life, and that's a scar I still have on my waist because of him. If it were just physical scars, I'm not sure I would be so worried, but I'd say the emotional scars, yeah, and bad memories are what I cannot get rid of. Because of my father, my brothers treated our mom and talked to her like she was their maid. They had no respect for her and would yell at her at the slightest thing. Speaking to Mom, she's been making quite a show about not attending my dad's burial, and it's beginning to make me mad. I'm partially mad at her for letting Dad treat her the way she was, and she keeps claiming that her parents raised her to be a traditional woman, and since she did not have access to education, she could not do so much to stand up to Dad. She could only ensure that all her children, especially her daughters, would have access to education, and that was the way she pressed me to go to college even when Dad kicked against it. I don't know what to do to make her understand that she was married to a toxic man, and she should not feel remorse for leaving him on his sickbed. I look forward to your comments and suggestions. Please, I will make another update soon. Update number 2. Hey guys, you guys are literally the family I've been looking for. I'm in awe of your love, support, and comments and all your suggestions. Thank you. For the person who's asking if I still feel bad about not attending my father's burial, the answer's no. Maybe I felt bad a couple weeks ago, but I do not feel that way anymore. Reading all your stories and seeing how you cut off from toxic parents, I no longer feel bad for not attending. I wish I had known earlier that I would have cut him off a long time ago, but I'm becoming somewhat of a softie at heart. I couldn't do it. You all suggest that my mom goes to get therapy. Well, it's been week 2 already and she has improved. She has so much to heal from, and right now I feel so bad for the poor woman. Now, the main purpose of this update is because my brothers showed up at my house some days ago and were demanding that I release my mom to them. Sharing this now is kind of funny, but when it happened, it wasn't. That weekend, my mom and I were at home just bonding and, of course, watching some, television, funny videos and whatnot when I heard noises right outside. Then I went to check and I was shocked that it was my brother. Well, I have no idea how they were able to get my home address, and they were clearly not welcome. They must have believed that they would bully my mom like they used to and manipulate her to go back to our hometown with them. But guess what? That didn't work. I told them to their face that they could never take my mom, and that annoyed them. Out of straight-up anger. Oh, they made a big scene, and it attracted the neighbors. But the moment I threatened to call the police, they left. That same day that they left, my uncles began to call me, and they rained abuse on me. They said that I was the worst thing that's happened to their family, and I simply tore their family apart, and that I had no right to keep my elderly mom with me. LOL. Anyways, I told them that as the oldest child, I had the right to be by my mom's side. And I'm going to be her caregiver. And I did not need anyone's permission to do that. I actually expected, that all the calls would end after that day. But it became so bad that I had to block their numbers. The drama in the past week have just been too much and is beginning to overwhelm me. What do I do, guys? Would I be going overboard if I just cut things off with my brothers and my father's family? Let me know. Final update. Hello, guys. You're the best. I just have to keep telling you that. I cannot thank you enough for taking your time out to leave all these helpful comments and suggestions on my post. After my last update, based on your comments and suggestions, I made up my mind. Then I would be cutting off my brothers and the rest of my father's family. I wanted to start by moving to a new location so that my brothers would not be able to find me. But something happened before that, and yesterday, one of my paternal uncles called with a different number to let me know that if I did not show up with my mom, I would be disowned and my mom would no longer be a part of their family. Once again, LOL. He was probably expecting that I would just drop to my knees, begging and pleading, if he did not see my response coming, I guess. I told him that every member of my father's family was already dead to me, and I didn't care if he was disowning me or not. Call it what you want. Immediately, I told him that. He starts yelling over the phone, and he said, I always told your father he made a terrible mistake by letting you go to college, and now you think that you're so much smarter than us. He sounded so pained, and you know what? I loved that pain in his voice, just like my father. He called me all sorts of horrible, degrading names. Anything that he could honestly think of. But, whatever. I've grown a thick skin.
Before I end the call, I told him that his daughters hate him, but he had no idea, and it would have been better if we were long dead than be such a horrible dad. That must have really hurt him because he didn't say anything after that. Was my uncle really expecting that I would let my mom go back to their stupid family home to look after grown-up adults? Anyways, and they treat her like trash? Never. I'm so glad that we can finally have a breath of fresh air, and my mom can go live the life of peace, love, and appreciation that she simply never had. I'll do anything, guys, in my power to make sure that she's happy, loved, and well taken care of. I know we might never be able to get rid of all the bitter memories, but I know that we have a lot of happy days ahead of us. Thank you so much. You guys are like my family. I wouldn't have done this without you all. I'm starting life on a fresh slate for once because of all you and your comments, and you have no idea what this means to me and my mom. You guys are simply the best.
So this whole time that I was reading this story, it was so wild to me. The fact that OP's family, they were just basically assuming that OP would just do whatever they said. Hey, you need to come here and do this for me. You need to do this. We're going to cut you off if you don't do that. I don't think they quite grasped in their mind, OP doesn't give a crap. She's way more successful than the entire family, and now she wants to look after her mother and make sure her mother is not being abused anymore. So when she told the family and her brothers, I don't want to be a part of you anymore, I don't know why it was such a shock to them. Anyways, I want to know what you guys would do if you find yourself in OP's very toxic position of having to deal with the family. And also, would you have gone to that funeral? I want to know, so drop it in the comment section down below, guys. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every day. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to subscribe for more daily videos. And of course, remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.